What's on your radar, Saagar?
Well, one of the themes in this show is that money matters a lot in determining political outcomes and determining life outcomes. But when it comes to political campaigns, it matters not just how much money you have, but where that money is coming from. We spend a lot of time here talking about the Democratic candidates, but one of the things that is often overlooked is who they're going to face in the general election: Donald Trump. The Republican National Committee put out its numbers for the month of September yesterday, raising $27.3 million. That comes on the heels of the Trump campaign's announcement that it raised $125 million in the third quarter and has nearly $158 million in cash on hand. To put that in perspective, that is 6 times what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren raised in the same period and 10 times that raised by Joe Biden. It would be really easy to dismiss Trump's campaign coffers as that cobbled together by Wall Street, but the data tells us a very different story. The average donation to the Trump campaign is $44, mirroring almost exactly the average donation number of Elizabeth Warren. Furthermore, 98.17% of those donations are $200 or less. This is fundamentally a grassroots level of fundraising, whatever you may think about his policies. This is something that so many in the current Democratic field just cannot hope to match whatsoever if they were to face him. Act Blue, the main client to donate to Democratic candidates, put out some very interesting data about the occupations of its primary donors. We discussed on this show yesterday, but fundraising data is perhaps one of the most important things we can get our hands on. Think about how much you have to believe in somebody to whip out your wallet and actually donate to a candidate. This recently revealed data shows some pretty starkly the political coalitions that each candidate is appealing to. Current leading candidates like Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren are not going to capture the White House with numbers like this. Take a look at Elizabeth Warren. A number one category that she's leading here is librarians, college professors, lawyers, and economists. Where does Pete Buttigieg compete? Well, chief executives, clergy, lawyers, physicians, economists. Donald Trump won the White House on the backs of forgotten Americans who hadn't donated to a campaign or believed in a government in a very long time. Those people outnumber the professional class that is obsessed with Warren and Buttigieg. So if you watch cable news and you read the New York Times, you might be deluded into thinking that the college-educated elite are the only people who decide our fate. But don't forget that only 27% of the country actually holds a 4-year degree from a college institution. If you look at the Democratic data I previewed earlier, you can see pretty much only Bernie Sanders and Andrew Yang actually appeal to normal Americans. From forklift operators to truck drivers and cashiers, these are the people that MSNBC reporters pass on their way to work or order a coffee from, but they far outnumber the people who rule the commanding heights of American culture. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and Andrew Yang actually all have a lot in common. Their message is fundamentally the same, that the political elite in Washington crafted decades of American policy to deliberately screw over American workers in favor of the corporate elite and China. This was bolstered by the media, the think tank class here in D.C., and was all done by taking the votes of working people and then working against them the moment that they came to Washington. Notice, too, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and Andrew Yang do not talk about. Elizabeth Warren talks a lot about economic inequality, but she also is obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, decriminalizing border crossing. She puts gender pronouns in her Twitter bio and is a social justice warrior incarnate in some ways. Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and so many others, they run far to the cultural left of the American electorate while basically running to their economic right. The Democratic Party seems pretty intent, from what I can see, in going in the latter direction. They want to protect their pals on Wall Street, deny the voices of those on Main Street, and I guess I shouldn't be too upset about it because it seems certain to deliver them another loss in 2020. And Ryan, I'm looking at this data. I know you look at political coalitions very similarly, which is there's a huge divide right now, progressive left, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I mean, if you look fundamentally at where the message is resonating, it seems that an Elizabeth Warren-like progressivism trying to wed the Harvard professor to that working class base, it has not materialized somewhat. Do you think that it would be able to if she were to win the nomination?
It's starting to in the polls. You're starting to see some working class numbers rise for Warren. I think your point on Trump is one that a ton of people on the left really miss.
Yeah.
That Trump is an extraordinary organizer, whether or not he knows it or not.
Yeah, he doesn't know it.
let's assume he doesn't.
Right.
But the kind of campaign that the left has always wanted to run, where you appeal to the base, where you inspire people in the grassroots to self-organize and drive themselves to the polls, is actually the one that it turns out the right has run from the right populist perspective. And people can't ignore that. And those small dollar numbers, those are real.
Yeah.
There might be a lot of grift involved there, but those are real people kicking in small amounts of money because they believe in what Trump is up to. And Trump has the organizing apparatus from 2016. He has all that data that they stole via Cambridge Analytica. They haven't given that back.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be able to map that to Facebook again. He has sophisticated people underneath him who are going to be able to take this. So Democrats need something that can match that.
It strikes me, Ryan, as actually what the Democrats have always wanted, right? Which is that hardcore grassroots fundraising base, which chips in money, and then also you have the elite institution buy-in. So you've got the RNC, the Democrat, the Republican data field, all the strategists. Everybody's getting paid, but the people are actually funding it. It's not a top-down; it's a bottom-up campaign. Is that capable for Democrats?
No.
Okay.
Democrats can never match that precisely because the small donors on the Republican side, not only do they not mind that billionaires are also funding Donald Trump, they like that.
Right.
They have a hierarchical worldview, and so they think that those billionaires who, because they're billionaires, are better than them. And they love the idea that they are in coalition with those billionaires against all this rabble. They don't consider themselves to be the rabble. Yeah. Whereas on the left, the rabble are always
with the billionaires,
attacking the billionaires at the top, and for very good reason. But it makes it very hard to do the kind of fundraising to match Republicans on the right. You saw Elizabeth Warren, she's like, I'm not going to do big dollar fundraisers. And I go, well, what about for the party? She's like, okay, I'll do them for the party. And everybody freaks out. That would never happen on the Republican side.
Do you think it's a mistake, though, for Warren to be doing that? I mean, from an institutional perspective, it makes sense. Like, I get it. But I understand why a lot of the people who look at it as a kind of a purity test wouldn't think so.
I don't know exactly, because we're not at a place yet where state parties are able to fund themselves with grassroots donors. I think the DNC needs to fend for itself. Yeah, like they don't get to claim status quo when they've been failing so much. They don't get to say no. We have to keep doing it the way we've done it in the past, because they're just miserable failures. But at the state party level, there hasn't been the investment to build like grassroots funded operations there yet. And so you've got all of these. They used to be called Jefferson Jackson dinners. Now they're J&J dinners. Is it wrong for an Elizabeth Warren or a Bernie Sanders to go to a J&J dinner where it costs $5,000 for a trial lawyer to get in and like eat a rubber chicken and watch some speeches in the capital of that state? I don't know. Is it really? I mean, unless you have another idea, like unless you have a way for the Colorado Party or whatever to fund itself outside of that, when we get there, then yes. But in the meantime, I don't know.
It's a good point. Everybody take heed. All right, next on Rising, Elizabeth Warren has a brand new education plan, but she's still dodging questions about her payment plan for Medicare for All.
And the Sanders campaign has the most well-attended rally in the primaries so far. I was there, and the Young Turks' Emma Vigeland was there too. We'll compare notes when Rising continues.